Welcome to the UnScripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. I am your host, John LeBrun, and yes, we are missing our brother Lafayette Lane for just one episode, but we are blessed to have a friend of the show, Brandon Miller, to discuss how dads can win at work and home. Brandon is one of the first 7 certified Gallup-Clifton StrengthsFinder coaches in the world. He is the CEO of 34 Strong, a coaching and consulting firm dedicated to improving employee engagement. Brandon has coached hundreds of leaders to find and leverage the strengths of themselves and their teams. He has nearly 15 years of experience providing specialized leadership training, coaching, advising, and facilitating. Brandon is also the co-founder of Incredible Family, which is a consulting agency that educates, empowers, and encourages working parents to take a strengths-based approach to parenting in order to unlock their best selves and raise strong, happy children and teens. He and his wife, Annalyn, have authored 2 books named Play to Their Strengths and also Incredible Parent. And Brandon Miller is here with us today. Brandon, welcome to the UnScripted Authentic Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here today.
Let's just jump right into it. So today we're going to talk about how dads can win at work and home. I feel like it's often felt like sometimes fathers may get stuck between, do I go and provide for the family, or do I come home and spend my sort of core time with them? And maybe they feel caught between 2 spots. Like they want to win at home, they want to win at work, but maybe just don't know how. Let's start from the beginning. How can dads succeed? What can dads do to also succeed at home, assuming they're already doing well at work?
Yeah. I'd like to start with the perspective of 18 summers. And when we think about our children, we have 18 summers to spend with them before we're launching them somehow, some way, whatever that's going to look like. Some launch a little later, some hit it right on the date, depending. And so as a dad, a philosophy that I've encouraged and been encouraged on is to remember that the season of fatherhood hands-on is relatively short in the season or grand scope of the relationship you're going to have with this grown adult one day. And so the concentrated time that you get to have while they're in their impressionable state, their state that they're ready to listen before they become teenagers and you're no longer relevant, just kidding, before they grow into different stages, it's important to have that mindset. And so I think one of the changes that I was able to shift at a good time in my parenting journey was to recognize that I have the whole rest of my life to work. I will always have opportunity to win in work. But this season with these people, I got this concentrated time. And so it pushed that win ahead of my work win. It made that more of the legacy, because when I'm long gone, someone might remember that I was a CEO of thus and such, or I wrote thus and such, but what they're going to know are the impact that my kids and my grandkids and so on, that those people had in time. And that's a healthy mindset I think we can take as dads who want to win at work and at home.
I love that impact of the kids and the grandkids. I love how you mentioned the 18 summers. I often tell people I only have 7 Christmases left with my son. He's 11. He'll be 18. Now, granted, will there be more Christmases? Yes. But the purpose is him waking up in his room and coming down for Christmas morning. I get 7 more. And that really is just like what you say with the summers. I always tell people that it's important to think about life in seasons. So, for example, I'm an entrepreneur. My family's entrepreneurs. But I also love to coach my son's sports team. And he plays a lacrosse kid. And I have 3 years left until he goes into high school, which means I get 3 seasons to coach. Because everybody says, well, if you don't coach, you'd be a little more productive in the spring with your business and so forth, and coaching and like actual like executive coaching. I'm like, yes, but I wouldn't have those 3 lacrosse seasons with my son. I will have to dismiss that. So while it is busier, or your business may be a hair slower, if that's even true, the reality is I get 3 lacrosse seasons left. So I love what you said about thinking of it as 18 summers.
Mhm.
Because reality is 18 years sounds so far. It sounds like you have so much time left. But as you know, the time goes by so quickly.
Yeah.
So on that same note, what do you say about people who struggle maybe with prioritizing their time then between work and those things for their children as far as what's important, what's not important?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that I've certainly wrestled with as a business owner,
Mhm.
a serial entrepreneur type, and I used to spend a lot of time on the road and a lot of time away, and I began to realize that my children spelled love Time,
Mm,
and it wasn't just that I would give them quality time when I'm with them; it was quantity, it was volume,
mm,
and volume mattered because whether we were just sitting there watching a show or a ball game or what have you, or we were doing something intentional or we were driving somewhere, that time of listening, being in each other's presence, being there to receive the questions that are naturally going to be in their mind, that was such an important part of a necessary transition I had to make. And coincidentally, one of the shifts was back to coaching. So with my older children, I got to experience some hands-on work with them in different facets. And now with my youngest two, I have a 15 and 12-year-old at home, two boys, and they're my youngest. So they're number 6 and number 7 of 7. So these are the last two, the last vestiges of my hands-on dadhood. And so I've made effort a year ago to be a football coach for my
mm,
then 13-year-old going on 14. Best investment, best decision I could have made. I mean, not only did we have an undefeated championship season to enjoy together, but just the relationship that we bonded in. And now my 12-year-old just let me know, hey, I'm ready for you to be my coach now, Dad. When do I get to have you as a coach? And so just really agree with you that I'll have time to go make money. Money's the most renewable resource on earth. Time is the resource you never get back. It's
mm,
the most unrenewable resource. And when we think about what that says to a person, a kid doesn't remember. Well, yeah, well, you gave me everything I wanted. No, their greatest complaint will be you didn't spend time with me. And so
mm.
that perspective as a parent, and I think as dads are emerging, as I'm noticing different movements around this question, to recognize I have a really important part here. I have a really important part to play in the development, growth, the nurturing, the influence, the encouragement, the structure that my kids are going to need.
Wow, I love that. What would you say? I know you mentioned that they spell, I think you said quality or quantity time. I know you spell it. You said we spell love Time. That's what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And part of that was that it takes a little bit of quality and quantity time.
Correct.
I've often thought about it as intentional time
Yeah.
because there's those moments where we could spend time in the car listening to the radio, or we could take that time to sow seeds into our children
Mhm.
through conversation and so forth. How important is intentional time in leading your kids?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's the reality that life isn't always scripted. It's messy. Things
It's
come up.
unscripted.
Yeah, I think something can come up through a song just as much as it can come up through a well thought through, planned out conversation. And so I've definitely had both because in our household we subscribe to a strengths based approach to parenting. So there
Mm,
there are some scripts we followed. So when my kids were in their elementary years, every time we pick them up from school, or as often as we remembered, we would ask them the same question: "What did you do today that made you feel strong?"
mm,
And what I was listening for is, who are you and what is it that makes you tick? What makes your eyes shine? What makes you really good at what you do? And it was so fun to hear the vast answers and the different times and just listen to them share, even if I had to pull something out of them, right? Like,
mhm.
oh, tell me more. And what does that mean? So there's definitely good scripting time and good intentional. I love that word as well. And then there's just, we're off script now. we're doing something because we think it's a great idea. And I'll tell you one of the ways that I did that. I was reading a book titled Fathered by God, and it's by John Eldridge. And I had read a book of his years back called Wild at Heart. And Wild at Heart
Mm.
challenged me as a dad to think about my sons and daughters differently. But this latest book, it talked about adventures. And so with my last two, and it wasn't, my wife does stuff with our two daughters that are just both, one moved out, one's gearing up to move out. But in this season with them, we decided to take an annual road trip. Just get in the vehicle and go drive thousands of miles to go see cool stuff. And I invited my dad to come with me. And so with my dad, my two boys, and two of my nephews, we've done this 2 years in a row now. I have had some of the richest conversations with my sons peeing on the side of the road or, grabbing fast food late at night or, a long drive or some site that we hadn't thought to see than even what was scripted on the trip. Just able to build connection, talks in the hotel in the morning over breakfast, just the substance of what that richness of time and travel and opportunity gave us to just learn to connect and get to know them and how to be there for them. Because my goal isn't raising great kids. I want to raise amazing adults. I want to raise amazing people that are going to be, excellent with their future and their career and their families and their communities and their, groups that they will do. And with that in mind, it's always, how do I support you to be whoever that amazing person's going to be?
Wow. And I mean, let's be honest. Are you really a dad if you haven't taught your kid how to pee his name on the side of the road? I mean, come on, right? A fence, the dirt, pick something. But that's how we learned cursive back in the 90s. But no, really. I love you had said you don't raise children, you raise adults. I feel like you've been in my house before because these are all conversations my wife and I have, like in a positive note, like we're raising adults. And what that really does is it changes your mindset on how you parent your children, that you're raising adults because you're always thinking about how them 10 years, 12 years, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something to that?
Oh, I do. My oldest son is 28, or he'll be 28 in a couple weeks, and he has three boys. I have three grandsons with him. Three boys under 5. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest joys in my life is watching my son be a dad and watching him take that mindset of, no, I can't go do that because I need to be home with my boys this weekend, or I need to be home in this evening, or I got this going on with my one that just started kindergarten, or this one here. And seeing that play out now as a part of the legacy, right? A part of the next phase of the journey. It is so rewarding because his work ethic, his commitment to his family, his love for his wife, these are the substance of things that you hope to see instilled and then carried forward in their path, their journey.
That's beautiful. And I think that's a tip of the hat to yourself and the example you and your wife have given to your children. Because without that example, it's not to say he wouldn't be a great father, but maybe it would have taken a little bit more digging to eventually get to that point, and maybe that would have become later down the road. You think?
It's hard to say. I think kids definitely take cues because they can't help with mirrored neurons. They can't help but take on mannerisms from their parents, even if they try to, their caregivers. They can try to avoid it all they want, but they're going to pick them up. And so they will. And so when you hear or see or experience something that you're like, oh, that was mine. Sorry. Sorry, that one wasn't a good one. Or, hey, ooh, that was a good one. I'm glad you got that. And then there's their own, right? Then there's their own unique soup and sauce that they bring in. And that's a cool thing to experience with watching that occur and to, grow gratitude, right? Because, the next journey now that I'm in as a grandparent is the influence I get to have to the next generation and the chance to, have a different level of influence and intimacy with those kids and how I connect and grow with them.
Wow, that's beautiful. You had mentioned something earlier that I just don't hear a lot. And you said you do strength-based parenting.
Yep.
And I didn't pre-tee this up before we even got on here. But can you talk a little bit to that philosophy about strength-based parenting?
Yeah. So my job is to go into companies and build strengths-based cultures. That's what we do
Mhm.
at my company for a living. And basically we're helping them rethink their management philosophy and approach. And we have all the science behind it and all the reasons, but I was some years into it and the thought occurred to me, I should probably do this with my now emerging teenagers because at home I was practicing a form of parenting that could be just referred to as conventional or just standard way of parenting. And the way it worked was, I'll use the classic report card conversation. Child brings home a report card. I'm evaluating their marks, and whatever mark I don't like the most is the one I'm going to spend the most time on. Right?
Mhm.
Whichever one I go, why do you got a C in math? What happened in math? I could have all A's on the rest of the report card, but we're about to have an hour-long conversation about why you got a C
Mhm.
in math. And a strengths approach when we teach it to managers or we think about it as a parent is you just reverse the time. You give more time to look at those A's, how they were, how did you get there? What did you do? How did you invest there? Could you be even better? Is there more to grow here? And then, yeah, we'll get to the C, we'll get to the B, we'll get to the D. Like we'll get there. We'll work on that, but we'll
Mhm.
also give more of that great equalizer of time to saying I'm more interested in your potential for greatness than I ever will be at solving your inadequacies, because these are going to ride your whole life. You're going to have weak points your whole life, but you only have so few strengths. You only have certain things you get to be awesome at. Let's find those and make those and the focus. And given that my oldest three that are now 29, 28, and almost 26, um, we caught it right at their emerging junior high school years. So
Mhm.
right at that place, and the adults that they became, the journeys that they've gotten. And I tell parents more than anything, the relationship we have with them, like they like to come to
Mhm.
us because they know we're going to tilt it toward their strengths. Play to your strengths. What is it? Where do you get energy? Where do you derive the greatest satisfaction? Where do you just see yourself being energized and thriving and soaring? And they're drawn to that. And I think it's an effective way to parent. And when you sit back and think about it, boy, it just makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So you had said focus more on the A's and yeah, touch base on the C or the D or whatever, which is really incredible because I have a theory why parents get so mad about the things their children aren't good at. But to me, getting mad at the C is almost like getting mad that they're not good at tennis.
Right.
It's like, what? You not good at tennis and gym this week? What's going on with you? Are you a loser? Right.
Right.
And I hope no one actually talks to their kids that way. But it comes down to, is the C due to lack of effort? Or are we struggling? Is it probably just not part of your zone of genius? Because let's be honest, we've all had those areas we're just not amazing at. And with all the research coming out over the last at least 20 years showing that straight A students don't necessarily lead into successful, productive adults, there's no correlation there. And there's plenty of D and F students who are doing amazing things in life. I think there's a little bit more to be focused on besides the grades on the report card. And I think the reason most of us focus so hard on that, or the fact that Johnny's not good at football or something, comes down to our egos. I think it's ego driven.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Parents and their egos.
Yeah. So my in the first book my wife and I wrote, we had to confront our own ego
Mm,
as we started to tell the story of our journey to becoming different parents, great, parents that were growing and learning a different approach, but deeper level, just different values, what we thought was
mm,
important. And what we had to confront was our children, if we were honest, existed to make us look good. They were in place that if they were well behaved, respectful, dressed right, we looked good. And that was more important than if they were good, that they
mm,
really were okay, that they really were in a good space. And confronting that ego that you said well caused us to realize that's not what it's about. What it's about is this child entrusted to me thriving, growing, having every opportunity to feel love and feel supported and feel engaged in this life and prepared for this journey called adulthood.
Mm.
That's what it's about. And because having 7 children, I can tell you I've had a lot of laboratory time, and they're so different. I have a daughter. She's right in the middle. She's number 4 of 7, and she is my strongest willed. I mean,
Mm.
so strong. And the other day, she sent me a meme. She said, "My dad gets mad at my attitude, but I'm literally him as a girl." And when she sent it to me, I wrote her back and I said, "OMG, that could not be more true." Because this one and I, we really had challenges through our teen years, and only later to uncover, wow, I was raising myself as a teenager, and
Mhm.
thankfully caught some things and learned some things and was able to recover from some areas that were hard, to see this kid who's shockingly talented and amazing, but she didn't like school. She didn't like certain things, but yet you could see what you just said. She might not have been the academic type, but put her in front of any group, she's brilliant. She's amazing. That
Mhm.
came because I was more interested in what's right with her than what I was apparently seeing what was wrong.
Wow. I feel like you're talking about my Lily. She's 8, and she tells us that she's an independent woman, and she does okay in school, but doesn't love it. My son is sort of an academic. He's really good at it. Just comes natural to him. He's always got high scores, very gifted in certain areas, accelerated classroom stuff, which is cool. But he doesn't know how to read a room. She's been reading rooms since she was 5. It just comes natural. She knows when to stop talking, when to make a joke. It just naturally comes to her. He has no idea, right? But his academics are amazing. But for her, it's the opposite. And she tells us all the time, I am an independent woman, but she's also just like myself. So, except for I am not an independent woman, as you can tell, but you get the point. So,
And and
so,
and and you're right. I mean, just seeing that variance and recognizing, I see you. I see
mhm.
those strengths emerging. I see that power you have. I see you growing into that. Now let's help channel that. Let's put some structure around it. Let's help you find some pathways that are going to fit, because this daughter I was mentioning, her younger sister moved out ahead of her. And for her, people are like, "Wow, is that okay with you, your younger sister?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm taking the free ride as long as I can." she
Mhm,
can she can go, start that journey, and she's a little, intrigued by it, but she's feeling like, yeah, I'm going to ride this out for this next season, and then I'll figure out my next move, because here's my plan. And I love that about her. I love that resolve. I love that strength of character, and that's what I choose to, and as a parent, you only have, so much influence, right? And where it's massive when they're young, big influence when they're young, it will diminish naturally over time to an extent, because they have to become autonomous adults. They
mhm,
have to become responsible. You parent,
mhm,
you want them to, right? You want them to
mhm,
become responsible people, so you have to diminish how much influence you get to have on
mm,
shaping what it is they do. Well, as that goes down, some parents mourn that loss. Like, can't I just spoon feed you what to do? And I say, dads, if you want to win at home, learn to celebrate when they make the good decision. Learn to empower them to make the decision, and be okay when they totally mess it up. And even celebrate failure, because now they learned another way not to
mm.
do it, and being okay with that process of growth and development that doesn't always feel good. It's not going to always work out well, but try to remember yourself back at those ages. You didn't get it all right either.
So you said a couple things. One, you said celebrate failure, which I love. But also earlier you talked about the C in math. And I feel like addressing the A's and then coming around to the C's, so to speak, and saying, hey, we can fix some of these things, but we understand it might not be your strength. I would guess maybe to really boil it down, not screaming at your kids for getting a C in math, would open up communication channels. Now, your kids are further down the road than mine. Have you found that having that attitude of approach, I would kind of give a little more approachability and sort of keep the communication channels open?
Yeah, so I use an example in our first book, Play to Their Strengths,
Hmm.
of my daughter Madeline. She was in 6th grade, and
Hmm.
Madeline had a report card, all A's, one B, and one C. And the conversation was started by, I was about to say what happened with math. It was about to be first thing. And so I caught those words before they came out, and I said, Madeline, wow, look at this report card. You had an A+ in reading. It really seems like you like to read. And she looks at me and she's smiling. She goes, Daddy, I love to read. You and Mom think you're putting me to bed, and I'll stay up till 2 a.m. reading books. And I said, that's great. We'll have to talk about your bedtime, but that's great. So I said, how about this? I caught wind of someone who did something like this. I said, how about this? I have an idea. I said, what if this summer, this was the end of the school year, I paid you to read books? Your job this summer is to read books. And if you do a book report after each book you read, for this many pages, you get this much, this much, this much. So it was like 100 pages for $1, 200 pages for $2, 500 pages, or excuse me, 300 pages or more was $5. As long as you turn in the book report. I said, what do you think? You want the job? And she just lies, eyes lit up. Yes, I do. And off she went. She read books that summer. I paid her in cash. She enjoyed the reading. I enjoyed reading the book reports, seeing her progress. Now, what I was doing is something that researchers have found, that when a child plays to their strengths, they increase resilience, they increase competence, they increase creativity. They also gain more energy. So they're gaining energy because a key indicator of strength is that it energizes versus depletes you, right? So at the end of the summer, when I said, all right, great job, how about we look at some tutoring for math? What do you think? My daughter's response was, sure, Dad, let's do some tutoring in math. Because now it wasn't punishment for the C, it was building on, hey, can we help you? And so we did some work with her math and got her, where she could go along and get it done. And, every now and then she popped an A, but mostly B's and sometimes a C. But, this kid's not probably doing calculus. She's in college now. She's probably, that's probably not her thing. But the areas that she loves, to read, she's got great strengths in certain areas that she will pursue now for her degree and her career.
Wow. You also established an amazing habit by playing to her strengths. It's kind of like my son is not great at organization, but he's a lot more likely to stay and learn the organization skills within things of interests and sort of within his genius, if that makes sense. He loves
Absolutely.
paleontology. As he's diving into that, if you get what I'm saying. That's amazing. I love that.
Well,
So
I was
go
also
ahead.
teaching, and just a really quick side point, that when your children are thinking about their careers, helping them to determine a career that plays to their strengths. So even to the extent that your listeners can invest something, teaching kids to do something that they make money at, that they're good at, and it doesn't even feel like work to them. You are training them to think about a future career that they get to do, a career that plays to their strengths. And that leads to engagement at work, meaning that they will be productive and successful, which affects their well-being. That's who they are at home. That's the parent that comes home. And so winning at work and as a father, finding that space where you're playing to your strengths in job has a lot to do with the dad that's going to come home and be with those kids.
Also, to add to that, I think so many parents take what they know about the world and they want to sort of steer the kids' career direction based on their limited, narrow view, right? And if they would just realize that if you just allow people to work in their strengths, God will just make room for that. They will be provided with that. It doesn't have to be, for example, my son loves paleontology. He was the kid at 4 years old, loved dinosaurs and never let it go. We have about every book you can imagine on the topic. It's crazy how much he knows. I know about nothing. But he says, Dad, I think the only way I can make money is go find a dinosaur head out in the middle of the desert. And I thought, well, son, there's a lot of facets to this. If you want to go down this road, there's other ways. You can teach universities, you can write books, you can have TV shows. There's so many opportunities to take your strengths and make income and love it at the same thing. It just may not be exactly what you think, because it may not be traditional go out in the desert and dig sort of mentality. But also, I think sometimes we maybe stop allowing our kids to pursue interest because we feel like it's a dead path, sort of, so to speak. You've had several kids come out of high
Yeah.
school. As we
Yep.
wrap up, how did you help them navigate their sort of interest? Or are they even still figuring it out? Because let's be honest, the more things we try in life, the more we sort of find those strengths. And often we're really trying those things out in our 20s and our 30s. I'm almost 40 years old
Absolutely.
and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, not really, but
So with 5 high school graduates, I can tell you that I'll go back to my son. He came out of school. He was very smart. School was easy
Mhm.
for him. Could do it on the side, get good grades, no problem. Got into college and he started to look around and he thought to himself, I don't know that I want to pay for college and come out and maybe make X dollars a year when it seems to me that there's a need in the trades and I'm good with my hands. And why don't I pursue that? So he dropped out of school. He went into the electrician's apprenticeship.
Mm.
Within 5 years, this kid is making amazing money.
Mhm.
He is primed for, I mean, there is such high need where I live in California for these folks that know trades. And I mean, high dollar jobs that he
Mhm.
can get himself into. I look back on that decision and go, that was brilliant, son. I have another one that her path was college. She wanted to go to the private Christian college. She wanted to live near the beach and she did it. And what that kid does so well is she's a networker. And so what she
Mm.
did is she started being a nanny for wealthy people in the area she went to school. And one of the families she nannied for, CEO. She gets done with college. That CEO says, I want you to come work for my startup. I'm going to pay you this amazing salary for a kid coming out of college, and got all the training and so much instruction for those first few years out of school and made a great salary. Since then, her father has recruited her. Now she works for my company. so I saw that path, and now she's growing in the family business, if you will. But it
Mhm.
was really great to see that dichotomy. One that just she knocked out her bachelor degrees in 3 years and went to work for a startup, and he was 5 years electrician, and now raising his 3 kids and his wife on
Wow.
just a great salary. Wife stays home, and just to watch that variance where I would not at his, when he was 12, 13, 14, I would not have thought that's where he was going. Look back now and go, what a great path. Good choice, son. Good choice.
Wow. So, Brandon, we ask every guest to sort of wrap up our show with their very own off script moment. Basically, something from the heart that you feel our audience should know. So, if you wouldn't mind, give us your sort of off script moment.
Yeah, I like to say that parents have an opportunity to learn through the filter of what fascinates you about your children as compared to what frustrates you about your kids.
Mm.
And when you can, because the frustration is the easy one to find. That's easy to find. Just wait for annoyance and you're going to know, But if you can learn how to shift frustration into fascination, how to, instead of just, boy, that's irritating me too. I wonder why. I wonder what it is about this. I wonder why they're doing this. Why are they saying this way? You will accomplish more in that connection with your child, in that growth in yourself, and that future development of your relationship with them than you ever could have if you let frustration have its say. Frustration to fascination.
I invite every one of you to stay connected with Brandon Miller. He's on LinkedIn. He's also on Twitter at Brandon34Strong. Also, check out his website, 34strong.com. Also, stay connected with us. We are Unscripted Leadership on all platforms, and you can find this episode on whatever you listen your podcasts. As always, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. Until next time, God bless.